Hello friends and welcome back to the Rayo Moon Oracle. I'm Rayo and today we are going over another card in our Tarot Discovery series, the Hanged Man. So card number 12. Moving straight along here, we keep going through. I know, I finally feel like we're going to get close to the end here. We're going to get to the end of the Major Arcana and it's going to be weird. Obviously there's like 78 cards in the tarot deck, so we still got a ways to go in terms of that, but like for the Major Arcana and this first big part of the series, we're getting close and I'm getting excited about that. So our Hanged Man today, as per usual, we're going to go over keywords, we'll go over some other meanings, symbols in the cards, the astrology, numerology, then we'll get into the reversals after I show you the cards I picked for us today. I have 3 cards from my various tarot decks, common ones we've seen before, pretty interesting ones, so I'm super excited. Let us get started. So for our Hanged Man, following our fool through the journey, right, we're definitely in that like adulthood stage at this point, right? So it's like we go back through and it's looking at the choices that we've made, the external and internal strength, going more dormant and like figuring, like isolating yourselves away with the Hermit card, figuring out what's going on with yourself, and then those like acts of like karma and like fate and the like destiny working in our lives, right? That with the Wheel of Fortune, you got the Justice card coming through, and then we get to the Hanged Man, and the Hanged Man is talking about is taking a pause, but it's more of a forced pause by the universe potentially, or it's using the intuition that we've gained through this journey with the tarot, right? Through our learning process, the Fool's gone through, to know when to take a step back and just like let life kind of move through, because it's not like pushing at that point, it's not going to help anymore. So you are either taking that pause or the universe itself is taking that pause for you. So we see the Hanged Man hanging off of the tree. So this is our original Rider Waite imagery. We're skipping around a little bit here, but that original Rider Waite imagery with our man hanging upside down attached to a living like world tree is usually what it's referred to. Hanging by one foot, but very calm expression on the Hanged Man's face here. So the Hanging Man has a very serene expression on their face. They have the halo around their head, showing that like kind of divinity and knowledge that they've picked up through their journey here. So a lot of calm coming through within color imagery for that blue, that like shirt, the color shirt that they're wearing, their color pants, showing that like power and energy that they have. So the Hanged Man is thought to be up there of their own volition. They may have been done by the universe, but they're not actively trying to get out of their situation, because they are taking the opportunity to see things from a new perspective, literally hanging upside down, right? Taking that breath, taking that pause to observe life, get resituated, reevaluate, and move forward again, and choose when to let go and choose when to start moving forward, but done very, very deliberately. So our key words for the Hanged Man are pause, shift of perspectives, readjustment, improvement, sacrifice, and limbo. Very different kind of important concepts there. So we also get that like reflection, rebirth process. There's flexibility, acceptance in this card, again, surrender, release. We have that shift in perspective, but also maybe a new perspective coming in, and like a waiting game. So we see it's a very deliberate pause, whether of the person's own volition or not, but it's very deliberate in that case. For this card, it's card number 12, so that adds up to the number 3. It's a more higher level frequency 3 in this case, so that's that mind, body, spirit coming in again, that creativeness, that insightfulness, that new perspective again, right? So, and then the number 12 is very important within our cultures, all of our cultures as a whole, right? So we've got 12 months in the year, we've got 12 signs in the zodiac. The number 12 is very relevant, like cosmically, for like that bigger cosmic order here. Elementally, it's not like tied to anything specifically. It was kind of hard to find it actually when I was doing research on this card, but it's a water card because again, that introspection, right? That perception, reflection. So elemental water, I've heard that it has more Neptunian energy because of that, and potentially tied to the sign of Pisces. So our common symbols in the card, you're going to see a lot. Obviously that hanging upside down, right? That's like the name of the card, the Hanged Man, hanged person, that concept of being upside down, right? And that shift in perspective, shift in reality, looking at things from a new vantage point, a new way. That's a very, very important concept in this card, and a very common reoccurring elements that we'll see with the original Rider Waite that we just talked about, and then the cards that we have coming up here. That halo or something to do with the head, that kind of perspective is also seen very commonly through the cards. We'll see it in the couple that I have coming up here for just that, like, again, that knowledge that's learned, that knowledge that we've gained through our journey as we've been working through the tarot and this life journey, right? We've learned a lot of things and we're going through life and we have actual like knowledge and perspectives to pull from. And that's why the Hanged Man is thought to be there purposely, right? So lots of bigger elements kind of tying in for those common symbols. Other meanings for this card, though, so it ties back into the Fool, actually, a lot. Excuse me. The imagery is very reminiscent of the Fool. So, but the difference here, right, is the Fool doesn't have any knowledge, doesn't have any perspective, doesn't know what's happening. It's just going in blindly, right? Versus the Hanged Man does have that knowledge, does have that perspective, has learned things on their journey. So it's coming from a different place. So it's kind of a good reflection, kind of mirror callback to the Fool card for it's like, oh, hey, this is where we are in our journey now. So they know things by comparison. So it's talking about being true to yourself. We're waiting for more favorable circumstances for the tide to kind of turn in our favor because life has turned upside down. So we're waiting for things to kind of rewrite themselves, go back up. We might be at a crossroads. That's that waiting game kind of coming into play, again, waiting for clarity to make the proper decision. So we don't necessarily control the situation. You got to like work with your intuition. So the universe is calling for a pause here in this case with a Hanged Man. So you can do it yourself because by using your intuition and recognizing the signs where it's like, okay, hey, I need a pause. I need to relax. I need to calm down, step back a second, or the universe will do it for you. And we'd rather do it of our own volition because the universe might not do it in the ways we would prefer. So, but it gives us the space to see new things, and that's the one of the big concepts for the Hanged Man card, and some of that other meaning is that space for new things, that new perspective, right? So, I have 3 cards for us today from my various tarot decks. So, one on top right here is our Light Seers tarot. So, this one right here, not a Hanged Man from what it looks like. Just based on the hair and other factors, right? So what I liked for this Hanged Man specifically, we see our what looks like a feminine figure and stuff, and she looks like she's in one of those like silks that you see like in the circus or one of those kind of shows, right? Or like when you're kind of doing some type of specific yoga, some type of exercise. That shows again that deliberate choice being placed, that the person placing themselves in this situation and hanging upside down, right? So it reminds me of like being like a kid and on the monkey bars and having your knees hanging off by your knees and seeing everything upside down. That's kind of that same feeling. A little bit more like whimsical and energetic because there's just like, hey, I'm choosing to do this, right? I want to see the world this way. I want the feeling of the blood rushing to my head and seeing everybody upside down. You see that kind of like halo again, right? It's more coming out of the third eye in this case for this Hanged Man specifically, but that again, that higher knowledge, that higher perspective, and choosing this, right? Choosing this for ourselves, choosing to pause, choosing to reevaluate. So I like the deliberate choice and the deliberate action in this card. It's very much easier to see, and it's a very calm position as well, it looks like, for this hanged person, this Hanged Man. Hanged Man. And again, so we see they're hanging onto their feet. They're holding that position, kind of getting that good stretch, and the other hand's reaching up and kind of out at the same time. So deliberate choice in the movement, deliberate choice in the placement, and being in the position we're in. So that Hanged Man specifically is like, okay, hey, I'm choosing to be upside down right now. I can get down when I want. It's not a big deal. I'm choosing to see things from this perspective now. And that's really cool for the Light Seers tarot. So I knew automatically when I was going through, because I've seen this one frequently, I was like, oh, I want that specific Hanged Man. I liked that one a lot. I knew for 2 of the 3 that I ended up picking today, I'm like, oh, I want that Hanged Man, and I want that Hanged Man based on the feelings of the cards, right? So our next one that I have just on top right here comes from the Santa Muerte. This Hanged Man definitely feels like a masculine figure in this case, and I like the call to like literally the game Hangman in this case, right? So we see the head detached from the body, in this case for our skeletal figure, right? So it looks like the game of Hangman, where it's like, okay, hey, you draw the head first, right? You start drawing the body as it's going down. So we see that post and holding the head of the hanged man, but the hanged man's the one holding it at the same time, right? Still showing that aspect of control there, where it's like, oh, I'm choosing to have my head here. I'm choosing my head to be separate from my body, away from it, right? Because I'm the one holding the post in this case. So that's very different. We see that like halo, like divine knowledge coming out again through on the head of the the skeleton here, right? We see that sun figure and all of the rays coming off. So we get that divinity in that aspect, right? That higher knowledge coming through that halo. So I think that's very interesting for this one. Let's see. Ooh, this hanged man's in water. That one, I didn't see that when I looked at this card initially. We see our hanged man, like literally, they're in waist deep water. So that calling into that element of water, that Neptune energy coming through this card. Again, that reflection, that deeper inner knowing. So that's part of that like rebirth process again, right? And that's another kind of change in perspective, because if you're seeing everything underwater, things looked a little bit different and skewed and reflected differently, right? So we get two different kinds of perspective changes with the water and then the head being separated from the body on this hanged man and the skeletal figure. So very different there. Let's see what else for this one. So cool, I didn't know they were in water. See a clock in the background, that's interesting. So that kind of like Wheel of Fortune, Wheel of Time coming back out through this card from previous cards in the tarot. Lots of water energy in this card. We see that with that rain coming down too, right? And our kind of storm clouds. So the acknowledgement, the choice of being in a kind of deliberate, like tumultuous area, right? Being in the middle of a storm, being in waist deep water, but still in control of the situation, right? For it's like, okay, my head's detached from my body, but I'm the one holding it. I'm the one choosing to be in this place right now. So I'm just kind of riding out the storm. That's what the hanged man also talks about, where it's like, okay, hey, life's just not going perfectly at the moment. We're just gonna ride it out. We're just gonna sit for a minute, pause, breathe, reevaluate, and then we'll move forward when the time's more opportune, more deliberate and right. So that's a very interesting hangman. Okay, interesting. So last one I have for us is from The Wild Unknown, of course. This one was a bat. Whenever I think of the hanged man, this is the one that actually pops out in my head first. Deep red eyes, which I think is cool. So it just like pops out of the card. Very strong energy in that regard. But it's a bat, and I think that's really fun. So that bat having that, like, we get more of that like water kind of like reflective energy with the nighttime, and the bat's kind of representing of that night energy, that like more moon, feminine, more like soft shadow energy, right? So again, our bat's hanging, we can't tell what it's hanging off. Oh, hanging off a limb. It's very hard to tell in the dark right there, actually, but it's hanging off a limb. But again, bats hang upside down purposely, right? That's how they sleep. That's how they just eat their food. Sometimes it's a very deliberate choice, right? The bat's hanging down and can choose to let go at any time. The bat's just, it's chilling there, and that's what it just wants to do, and that's what it's doing with its life. And purposely does that to sleep, to eat, to live its life in that regard, and can choose to let go at any time and fly off. So it doesn't have to worry about what it's doing. It doesn't have to worry about being upside down, because that's just how it lives its life, right? And living life from that perspective in both ways, right? It's moving back and forth, because it's like, okay, it's upside down a good portion of the time, and then back to right side up as it's flying around and moving through. And bats also have a lots of different perspective energy. If you think about that echolocation and the way they move through the darkness, they have a whole different perspective. So that's another cool element added in for this hanged man specifically, where it's like, oh, hey, I see things upside down, I see things right side up, plus I see things in the dark through using echolocation and sound. So whole different game there, right? So many different ways to see things, and it calls to where it's like, okay, you don't have to just look at things from one perspective and then maybe slip to the opposite perspective. There's so many other perspectives and options and ways to look at things to get a full, big, complete picture here. So very strong Hanged Man card, and I really enjoy that one a lot. Usually the first one I think of. So that is the 3 Hanged Men I have for us for the tarot today. So let us get into our reversals now. So reversals, as we get further into the Major Arcana, it's very, it's much harder to get a deliberate too much or not enough energy as we keep working through. So there's just general meanings, and it applies depending on the situation, which that's just how tarot works, right? But for the reverse, for the Hanged Man, we get karma. You being in the situation for a reason, potentially, where you have to figure out that reason. There's definitely a need for patience. There might be a sacrifice in there. The Hanged Man card talks a lot about sacrifice, for both in the positive and the negative, where it's okay, hey, you have to make a sacrifice and let go and not do something you maybe wanted to do because it's not the opportune time for it, or it's the universe telling you need to take this pause. So you have to make that deliberate choice, that deliberate decision, sacrifice something potentially in order to move forward in the bigger picture, in the bigger scheme of life. So that necessary sacrifice coming through, we get loss and martyrdom. The martyrdom, I think, is a really important aspect for the reverse Hanged Man, because somebody that is choosing deliberately to hold themselves back and keep the pause because they're trying to show that they have more knowledge, right? That's a very different way to do things that maybe isn't in the best regard for everyone. Martyrdom is good in very specific cases, but for the most part, it's very easy to get into a victim mentality, I think, in my personal opinion. Also with this card for the negatives, we've got egotism. There might be a lack of commitment, a missed opportunity, stagnation. That's very common in this kind of part of the Major Arcana for this. That energy is stagnation. And we might be giving. There's so much giving, but we're not receiving a lot. Calling back to oh, hey, reevaluate what's going on. We can be rash and impulsive, where we're just jumping into things because we are trying to make the energy move forward despite it being wanting to stop and wanting us to take a break. So we got that inner discontentment because we're activating old patterns, staying in those old patterns that aren't working for us anymore. So in that case, we get delays and stalling, which could be a sign from those, hey, I'm taking this impulsive action because I'm trying to delay working on this thing about myself that scares me. So you get that resistance. And what it ultimately ended up boiling down to is that it feels like you're swimming upstream. You're going against the current. You're trying to hold on to the rock as this water's coming down and it's pulling you this way. Life wants you to go the one way and you're trying to swim upstream, and that's not going to work. That's not going to work in the long run. It's just, you're going to keep hitting your head against a wall. But on the other hand, for a reversed Hanged Man, it might be time to actually move forward. It might be calling you, or it's okay, hey, you're staying still too long, you're paused for too long, it's time to go out and do the thing now, even though you might not be 100% ready. So lots of different elements in this card. It's very simple in terms of its keywords, but those keywords are all very, very big picture, multiple layered meanings for each one, right? So you think of the concept of surrender, and it's okay, in what capacity, how much, what are we doing, what does a pause mean? Shift in perspective can be anything, right? There's so many. Each of those words, those keywords, those big pictures for the Hanged Man, have many, many layers to them. And that's kind of also another interesting thing I'm noticing as we're getting further into the Major Arcana and further into the tarot, with our majors being these huge themes that are so multi-layered, multi-dimensional. But it's interesting at the same time. So that's where we get into those interpretations, and that's where that psychic energy comes in, and learning the process, right? But that's all I have for us today, everyone. So hopefully this video is informative to you. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below if it was helpful to you. That would help me out a lot if you did. I'll see you next time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.